Maybe don't have that last thing for this video. So if you're anything like me, a 4 out of 10 good-looking middle-aged male, you've probably thought about or are thinking about the end of the world. Whether it be an asteroid strike, civil unrest, pandemic, or the eventual return of the mole people, I'm just saying, look into the literature. It's common for us to want to be prepared in case of disaster. Now ordinarily this means stockpiling food you wouldn't otherwise eat, or at least enough ordnance to encourage your neighbor to part with theirs. There are other things worth considering adding to your stockpile. Today I'm looking at 3D printers as a garnish item for your inventory for Armageddon. What's even in here? What's even... Ooh. And once again, if you're not already, subscribe for more content like this. Now out of the gate, you might think that 3D printers aren't a good device for the end of the world type scenario. But consider it's a machine that can make pretty much anything, at least anything out of plastic. Now, the core value at the center of prepping for these types of things, at least in my view, can probably be put most succinctly as gathering a bunch of the stuff that you're gonna need before bad thing happen. Now that doesn't just mean food and lead hornets, but things like medicine, tools, raw materials, stuff like that. And with a 3D printer, you'd be able to print the things that you need during this scenario to outlive and outlast the mole people. So what are you gonna need? First up, obviously a 3D printer. Probably the most important thing that I would think, again, if we're in this scenario, is something that doesn't require an internet connection, a cloud connection, something that has to connect back to the mothership in order to operate. Not saying any names. Bamboo! I'd recommend something sturdy, small, not power hungry, with the ability to print various different things, something that can be moved around very easily. For that, I've got obviously this one, the Flashforge 85M Pro. It's enclosed, it can print exotic materials, it's not terribly power hungry, and it fits in a nice place. The experience I've had with this machine thus far, this is not a sponsored video, the experience that I've had thus far has been great with this thing, and so at the price point, I think it's a worthy addition if you're interested in doing something like this for your 3D printing stockpile. Well, let's be honest here, you're not gonna be setting up an Etsy shop in the wasteland. Most of these things are gonna be ad hoc solutions, things to temporarily get you by in a tough spot. I wouldn't worry too much about the ability to print really exotic materials like nylon, carbon fiber, or anything like that. Most of your prints are probably going to be PLA or PETG. Next up, you're going to need a computer or something to generate the files that you're going to print. Now you could go through ahead of time and load up a bunch of USB drives with various G codes already pre-sliced, ready to go. In the event something happens, you can go ahead and pop them in the machine and start printing. Or better yet, just go ahead and print them now. I think the real value in that is when you're going through that process to figure out what to print for the end of the world, well, it may just prompt you to go ahead and buy it now while society is still alive, something on Amazon, so you can get the proper tools made of metal or better materials. At least this is an exercise for you to kind of consider, what am I going to need? Oh, I need that. Well, let's just go ahead and buy it. But again, if you're slicing stuff and it's the end of the world, then you're probably going to need a computer that doesn't require an internet connection, some kind of CAD program to design various things that you might need during the end times. Now, I don't like CAD. I don't like doing any of that, so I'd recommend something like Tinkercad. Unfortunately, the web version of Tinkercad requires an internet connection, and we can probably safely assume that ain't gonna be a thing. Now, Tinkercad does have an iPad option, and there are other CAD programs that don't require an internet connection, don't require an account, so you may look into those at your leisure. Or just go through any of the popular 3D printing file websites or Yegi aggregators like that and search for SHTF or End of the World or prepping or things like that to get some inspiration and ideas. Ugh. Next up, power. Most people in the prepping space are already accounting for power, things like gasoline generators, solar panels. I like solutions like this. This is an Anchor product. It's a battery backup. I use it for if we have just a power outage for, like, say, a few hours or something like that. These work really well for that kind of scenario. You can power a few things, charge phones, etc. If we're talking about end of the world type scenarios, something like this is not going to hold up, although this Anchor product does charge through solar panels. I do like these Anchor products because, well, they're expandable, so you can add more of these batteries to your array, charge it via solar. Not a sponsored video. If you want to check something like this out, links in the description below. Next up, Filament. PLA is going to be your main workhorse here. I like the Elegoo Rapid PLA Plus. It's what I use for pretty much everything. Most of your prints are going to be done with something like this. PETG for something a little more robust, heat resistant, stands up to the elements a little bit better. And again, none of these prints are really meant to go the distance, but in a pinch, it could be the difference between life or slave to the mole people. Another one I feel is probably great to add is TPU. Printing things like gaskets, grommets, seals, anything that has that rubber-like quality could make a big difference for you in your situation. So what are some of the things to 3D print for the end of the world? Just searching on a site like Yegi or Thingiverse or any Maker World, any of those sites, you can find all sorts of little items that could come in handy. I've got this small assortment here of different things that I think may help you out. Number one, things like canisters, because you never know what you're gonna need to pack or, you know, put away or hide or whatever. Very simple to print, very easy to print, no supports, screw on, expandable, so on, so forth. Link in the description below. Another thing too, this water key. So if you've ever been to a commercial space, maybe you're hanging out outside an Arby's, you'll notice their water spigots don't have the little turny things on there, and that's because Arby's doesn't want you using their water to fill up your swimming pool. Apparently buying 3 beef and cheddars in one day doesn't entitle you to their water. Believe me, I know. Things like this commercial water key can be used to turn off water places and different things. If you're in a survival scenario, you're gonna get water wherever you can get it. So things like this, you might not have thought about before the end of the world, but afterward, you sure hope you have one. Hope you have one. And little tool things too. This is an X-Acto blade holder. Things like a box cutter. You have the blades, but you don't have the handle. Well, you could use something like this to cut whatever it is that you need, and then you have it safe, not have just blades hanging around, because you don't want that. Medical supplies like this tourniquet. If you have an injury, you use the tourniquet to stop the bleeding so you can get proper help at the hospital that's not open, I guess. Things like buckle snaps could be the life-saving difference you need if you're having to backpack and make your way away from the mole, the raiders or whatever. Things like this could come in handy. Also carabiners. When I printed this, I thought, who's gonna use a plastic carabiner? But when I printed this, I was kind of blown away with how strong it is. This is 15% infill, 2 wall loops PLA, and it's holding tight. Something that's 15, 20 pounds even, it could hold the weight of that. Now, I wouldn't use this for a long-term thing, but if you've only got a certain number of metal carabiners, well, this one could take over for one of them, and you could use the metal one for something that's more important. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of items, all available for free download. If you search those sites for different things that you may think are useful in your application, be sure to check them out. Link in the description below. And did you think I'd really forget to mention that? If you're in the 3D printing space, you're probably aware that there are hundreds, thousands, millions of different types of files for accessories, add-ons, accoutrements for your different sort of, I'll call them lead accelerators, lead hornet launchers. Post in the comments below your best euphemism, slang type, funny term for what I'm talking about. And since these things border into a very darker shade of gray pale for what's acceptable to talk about on YouTube, because hey, I'm trying to grow my channel here, I'm not gonna go into it too much, but just know, again, end of the world survival scenario, probably something you want to look into. Actually, one of the more brilliant ideas, courtesy of my wife, came in and said something like, a dummy 13. How could a dummy 13 benefit me in the end of the world? Well, as a decoy. So you set this up outside somewhere, and when the mole people come to take their prisoners, they'll take the dummy 13 and not you. Or quite simply filling up your house full of these things so it appears that you've got a standing militia inside so no one messes with you. So let me know in the comments below, what other things might you print for a prepping end of the world type scenario? Not saying it's gonna happen, not saying I do that kind of thing, but I find that it's sort of a common trope among middle-aged men in my similar situation to at least flirt with the idea, because you watch the news every day, you're extremely online, you start seeing things and think like, man, something really could happen. You see the news say, oh, this asteroid has a X% chance of hitting the Earth, and you can't help but think, I need green beans. Let me know what your best prints are in the comments below. Be sure to like the video because it's the nice thing to do, and subscribe for more content like this. I'm the Technicals. See you next time.